the things we've talked about over the years when we talk to Steve Mikkelson, almost always on the phone, is he can't hear some of what we're doing on the radio, so like some of the sound effects and stuff. So I don't even know if he knows that we always start by saying, let's talk to Steve Mikkelson, and we play this. And usually this is where I would insert from whatever sportsbook Steve Mikkelson is at, but instead, he's right here.
Yay!
Hi, Steve.
Hi, it is so cool to be here.
Oh, it's so nice to have you here.
We were talking off the air
love
that we've been in the building now, 10 years, 11 years, and you've never been.
I thought I had been here, but I had not. I'd been to your studio
At 98 Rock.
98 Rock.
The flagship.
And the one in Reno. I'd done a show for March Madness there before, but I thought I had been here, but I have not.
Well, welcome, and as a great guest, because a lot of people were asking, not just us, but listeners, you did, in fact, bring your wife's amazing brownies.
Oh, my
Absolutely. There's no way my wife would ever allow me to show up and see you guys without bringing those brownies. And I love it because she doesn't ever make them for me. So the only time I get them is when you come to town or, I come and visit you in the studio.
Well, that's good, Steve, because we wouldn't have let you in the studio had you not brought them. And thank you for being such a trooper and letting us gag you and put a bag over your head and ride in a panel van for a couple of hours before you got to our secret squirrel location.
What? So there is a tray back where you're staying for you of the brownies?
I'm not sure. She got up really early this morning as I was getting ready to drive over, and she has the individual trays. So she has some for Dawn, some for you, some for Brandon. So she, made sure that everybody gets their share.
Nice.
So
nice.
that kind of brings us all to the fact that it was the last time I had the brownies, the last time I was with you and your wife, it was 8 months ago at your sportsbook in Las Vegas for Thanksgiving. My wife and I were hanging out. Can you believe it was 8 months ago and everything that's happened since then?
Yeah, it's unbelievable where we're at in today's world and all that. And, I'm unemployed still. So, but so's a lot of people. And, hopefully we can just get back to normalcy. And, jobs will be there. Sports has to start playing. We finally got some baseball yesterday. So that was good.
We're going to get to all the sports because that's the reason you're here, so you and I can have some fun. But people do. They ask about everybody that's part of the Rad family, and they like to get updates. So you've already alluded to the fact you're on. What are you even doing in the air? You still live in Vegas?
I still live in Vegas. I love Las Vegas. We have a pool. It's hot there. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I am so glad we have a pool because I go swimming every day.
Good.
So it's great.
So what are you doing in our neck of the woods then?
I am up here. My daughter got married last August, and she is going to have a baby in September.
Grandpa Steve! That's not your first grandkid, though.
No, it will be my first.
This is your first grandkid?
Absolutely. It will be my first grandchild.
Wow.
Congratulations.
And she's going to have a baby girl. And so excited. For the longest time, I didn't want to be a grandfather. It's like, oh, that makes me sound so old. But I've come to the fact I am old. It is what it is.
Yeah, you are.
And I can't wait because now, with your kids, you want to spoil them, but yet you got to be the parent. You got to be the disciplinarian. I don't have to do that.
No.
I can just spoil them, and when they act up, hand them off or go away.
God, what is that like something in the gene? Like all grandparents become that instantly. You throw everything out the window that has to do with discipline or raising. That's the kid's job.
Yeah, and I can't wait for my daughter to say, hey, you never did that with me, Dad. How come you never? Well, you were my daughter. I had to raise you differently. This is my grandchild. I'm here to enjoy them while I can.
Speaking of your children, when I was down in Vegas, but my wife and I we were listening intently. Your other daughter is she still in the sports book trade?
My daughter is in the sports book trade, which is crazy. She absolutely loves it. She is currently a supervisor at Westgate, which is one of the biggest sports books in Las Vegas. She started off as a part-time job. She loved it. They promoted her up, and she absolutely loves it. Who would have thought my daughter be in the race and sports book?
Right? Was she when she was growing up? Was she always just fascinated by what you did, and that's where it comes from?
No, she always has liked sports. She didn't have a choice. I mean, she tells stories that Dad would come home at 7 at night and sorry, TV's ours. We're gonna watch sports now. So she's like, So I always had to watch the baseball or the basketball or the football games because that's what Dad did, and I accepted it, and she enjoyed it, and. She went to Las Vegas to go to college. She needed a part-time job. I told her working in a race and sports book is one of the best part-time jobs you can have because you have to work weekends. And they're flexible with you weekdays because that's not when a lot of stuff's going on. So as long as you can commit Saturday and Sunday, the weekdays they'll work with you. So she got the part-time job, and next thing I know, she quit school. She loved it so much, and she went to full-time, and she's been there ever since.
And she's made it through this disaster.
Absolutely, yes.
So, so that brings us back to you. So, do you have a future somewhere back in sports books, or what are you thinking?
Well, right now, I'll tell you, I've put out my name and reached out to pretty much every sports book there is, offshores included type of thing. But until sports get playing, no one's hiring.
Right.
It's like everything. Until your business levels are going to come back to where they were, we have to see if there's actually going to be an NFL season. And I don't want to get too far into the sports part, but, until they get to playing and we find out where the business level is, no one's hiring. So I hope to someday possibly get back into the race and sports book. But you know what? I'm working on a couple of other ventures, and maybe something better will come out of this.
Do you have a read on, with your daughter in the industry? So, like, as you mentioned, some sports have come back. Baseball started yesterday. Were people betting on baseball?
Yes. People.
As long as it's here, they'll bet, right?
As it's something that they offer. I mean, we can race two turtles in the parking lot, and they're going to make bets on it.
So, yesterday, Major League Baseball was back. Of course, it had to have that 2020 COVID feel to it in a couple senses. Right before the game, Juan Soto, the Nationals' star outfielder, tested positive for COVID, so he's out. And then, of course, we get a rain delay as well. But baseball was back, and you are disgustingly more positive than I am. So what was I assume you watched, and what did you feel watching baseball yesterday?
I've actually been watching the preseason games, too. I mean, anything for sports to be on TV. I just love it. It is weird. I was watching an exhibition game with the Cubs, and there's a home run hit the outfield, and the bleachers are always filled. That's part of, the Wrigley Field, and there's nothing there, and it's eerie. I'm curious to know if there's really going to be a home field advantage, or maybe you want to be the visiting team, because if you can put a couple runs up early in that game, there's no home field and fans to swing that momentum.
The only home field advantage I could think of with baseball that I mentioned on the air a week ago was you do have the benefit of understanding the nooks and the crannies and the angles of how the ball will bounce, because every field is different. But other than that, like basketball, where they're playing in a bubble starting in a week, there's no home field advantage now, because every court's the same and you have no fans.
Right, and they're going to be playing basically on the same court for everyone for all the games, because they're all at Disney World and playing in a bubble.
Which that, by the way, speaking to what you do, that makes the betting so much harder. That whole home field advantage thing is gone.
Correct. It's going to be real interesting to see how that part plays out. And it's going to be different because, like with the hockey playoffs, and they haven't announced it, but, looking at it logically, it's going to be like March Madness. They're going to roll a hockey game out at 10 o'clock. They're going to play at 1 o'clock. They're going to play at 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock. They don't have to worry about emptying the arena because nobody's there. They just got to get the Zamboni machine on there or whatever. But instead of everyone playing at the same time, you're just going to watch one game at a time, which is great for betting purposes, because then I'm betting this game. This is the one on TV. Before the game's over, I pretty much know, am I winning or do I, double up and catch up on the next game? So from betting purposes, it actually works better for sportsbooks.
So it's also great for presumably guys like you, me to a lesser extent, if you can get past the weirdness of it, because it's endless sport. We've had nothing, and now we're going to get overloaded with sports to watch.
I'm not sure I can really actually get overloaded with sports. My wife absolutely, but.
Hey, she's had a 4-month break.
Yeah, exactly. It's time. I can only do so much yard work.
Oh gosh.
You run out of things to do.
So last night's game, you were already watching preseason. You were able to enjoy it.
Yes. The big question I got out of last night's game is how much do they have to pay for the cardboard cutouts of the people who own the season tickets?
So that's the late game, right?
Yes, with the Dodger game.
Because the Nationals, what do they do? They didn't have any cardboard cutouts.
Well, they weren't sure they were actually going to be able to play in that ballpark.
Oh, that's right. They had to wait. They had to wait. That's right.
DC was messing with them on whether or not they could play there. Like Toronto, we don't know where they're fully playing now.
And even Pittsburgh told them to take a hike.
Which is crazy, because I thought they had agreed, and then last night I'm watching it, and it's like, nope, now they're talking, moving to Baltimore and playing there.
Okay, you ask questions, I have answers. Specifically to the Dodgers. The Dodgers so far have sold over 5,000 cutouts of human fans at prices ranging from $149 to $299.
Dang.
Depending on where you're seating.
Is that per game?
No, it's for as long as this goes.
Yeah, that's a good question, though.
No, yeah, it's one-time fee, and the team says that if fans are eventually allowed at any time, which they won't be probably, they reserve the right to relocate or remove the cutouts. All sales are final, etc.
No, I bring my cutout with me.
Yeah, do they
prop it up in your family room?
Yeah. Do they give it back to you? That's a good question. They're made of weatherproof material. The cutouts are 18 inches wide, 30 inches high, and the Dodgers are now also selling cutouts for dogs. You can send in a picture of your dog.
Gosh, that is great.
There's going to be a special Pups in the Park section in 2 areas.
I thought I saw they even had some up in the higher seats. It was a Dodgers game.
The Dodgers have them last night. Yeah.
So I was, okay, that's great. They spread it out. Or no, that's just what the seats they were choosing.
Have you heard what the A's are doing? If your cardboard cutout gets hit by a foul ball, they'll mail you the ball. How cool is that?
Really?
Yeah.
That is really cool. That'd be like the only way I'd ever get, because I've been to a lot of games. I've never gotten a foul ball
Me too.
in a major league ballpark. I have in the minors. But yeah, that'd be great. I finally can't go to the game, and my cutout got a ball.
Because that adds a layer, right, to the watching. Because in the early game yesterday with the Yankees and the Nationals, when balls would go into the stands, all we got to see was the cameraman would chase down the ball, and then you saw him picking. The cameraman must have like 30 balls after last night.
That's a lot of balls.
But by the way, before we get past this, because there's a little bit of sports talk. So with Juan Soto testing positive, a lot of people were wondering how this is going to work. So here's how this works. The positive test result sidelines him. The season's only 60 games long. He has to now test negative in consecutive tests, at least 24 hours apart, pass a health screening, and be approved by doctors from Major League Baseball and the Players Association.
Dang.
To give you some context, the closer for the Yankees, Aroldis Chapman, tested positive on July 9th. It's the 24th today. He has never had symptoms. He's working out at home, and he keeps testing positive. So he can't come back.
How annoying.
Now this adds another layer, both to sports betting and strategy. Dawn of all people made this observation.
Oh, you're such a brat.
With all of these sports, it used to be we would look at the disabled list or the injured reserve list. Now you look at who's COVID got because it changes the dynamic for every team.
Absolutely. And I think it's really going to get interesting for the NFL when they go playing. I mean, can you imagine Tom Brady ends up testing positive for COVID?
Oh, gosh.
And you went from, Super Bowl favorite to, they're middle of the pack and 8-8 at best. And I mean, which makes it interesting for sports betting, because how far out in advance do you really want to make that bet? Because they're going to be testing, I believe, like game day. Like you see Juan Soto go down, and you think he's playing the night before, and now he's not playing, and the lines are going to move. I mean, so many things change immediately. And you know what's when you find that out
about the Juan Soto story is he actually tested on Tuesday, but it took until yesterday to get the results. This is one of the problems with our COVID reaction in America is our tests don't come back quickly enough. So it was literally yesterday morning. They all woke up thinking one of the best players in the game was in the starting lineup, and it was yesterday morning that they found out. But with the NFL, because we can just bounce around here, I'm wondering, Steve, you mentioned Tom Brady, but football, different than baseball. If one guy tests positive, is it then like this domino effect of the whole defensive line? Because they're practicing, they're together, and that's what I'm concerned about. And does it lead to forfeits and stuff? And we don't know. We haven't gotten the answers.
Yeah, we don't know yet. I would lead to believe at this point, because you've seen like baseball players in groups and they're working out together, and to this point, when one tests positive, next thing you know, within the next 3 or 4 days, the whole group has. So you hit NFL. And I mean, we're not having preseason games. Well, they're also not working together as units. So what's going to happen, when I'm sure they're not doing a whole lot of tackling and stuff in drills, and all of a sudden you're hitting a game, it counts, and they haven't played together.
Would you rather them put on, who are the teams that play in preseason? Who are the people on those teams? Are those folks hoping to make the team, or are they all the backups that are out there playing in preseason?
Normally there's 4 games. The first game and the 4th game is more the backups trying to earn a spot on the roster. Weeks 2 and weeks 3 tend to be the starters just trying to get in game shape and get going and playing. So there's a factor in all of it. And no preseason games means if you're that borderline player, you didn't get the preseason to show off your talent and in hopes of making a roster, they're going to go, well, you weren't on a team at the end of last year because you got cut midseason, so chances are you're not going to make a team this year.
So do they always have a backup team ready to go if something or will they now if something like this were to happen, what you just described, a forfeit or a backup team?
And what is that? They've talked about expanding the rosters to as many of 80 players, but what does that look like? Because if you're not fielding your best team, what's the backup Patriots team look like? It's your high school team? I mean, that's going to be terrible if that's the plan.
Yeah, I agree. But part of the beauty of this, we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Here we go. Uncharted waters for sports as well.
So what's your the one I have the most confidence in is the NBA. Because they've got 0 positive tests going in and they're in that bubble. But what's your confidence for any of them in terms of completing this?
I think the problem that I have with the NBA is they're in that bubble. Okay.
They're going to get restless?
Absolutely. Yep. These guys are like 21 to 26 years old. Yep. You really believe they're going to stay in a bubble for 4, 5, 6 weeks?
Well, they didn't, right? Because remember, they got the 2 guys that snuck out, the Kings guy and the other guy, when they got there. So then everybody got in line. But yeah, after a few weeks,
there's no way. And they were talking about hockey, and they were interviewing the Golden Knights guys before they're going up to Edmonton. And so what are you bringing? They're all like, the Xbox, because, well, I don't really play, but that's what everybody's going to be doing because we can't go out and do anything. There's no way these guys are going to be able to stay in a bubble. I'm sorry. But the problem is, though, is if you go out and something happens, I mean, you're bringing your whole team down.
The doomsday scenario that we've heard is that something happens that stops the season. And when we were talking about this earlier this week, Dawn was like, how devastating. Mm-hmm. We get sports back. And we get into it, we accept it, that this is it, this is what we're getting. And so and then suddenly something happens that shuts down us. That would be the worst part. These forfeits and things, I think we can just adjust to all of this. But if it's like, we're done, that's going to suck.
Yeah, and the sad part is, as much as I want sports, I think it's a 50-50 shot on whether or not that actually happens. Because all it takes is something bad to happen, to someone. I mean, fearful that one of the star athletes catches COVID and actually has the bad reaction and gets put on the ventilator. And so all sports will be shut down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's over.
Yeah. Do you think we'll have college football? Because I do not have a lot of hope in college football. And a lot of them have already canceled it.
Yeah, I think college football is the one that's really iffy. I believe Lou Holtz came out last week and said he didn't think there'd be a season. Urban Meyer does believe there's going to be a season, but he's not convinced that anyone other than really like the Power 5 conferences will play. When you hit the smaller conferences, they're not going to happen. They're playing in conference games only, which is good because they can control it somewhat. But see, I think it's 50-50 on whether or not we get through the pros. I would put college, I think 75%. I think they're going to start up. I just don't think they're going to finish.
Boy, and you bring I hadn't even thought of your scenario, but you want to talk about something even worse, is if a college kid
correct
winds up in the hospital. Like, he's got an underlying condition we don't even know yet.
Right.
And so he winds up on a ventilator. Everybody shuts down at that point because it's even though he's not a quote kid, he is a kid, right? He's 20, he's 21.
Yep.
It's gonna affect the psyche so much worse nationally if something terrible like that.
Absolutely. And it would be, I mean, it's terrible for anyone.
Yes.
But if you hit a college student who's playing college sports,
not getting paid,
there's
all that.
Right. And this happens. It's going to be ugly.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We got a few emails here. Some actual sports questions are coming in. Imagine that. Phone number is 888-989-9811. We'll continue with Steve Mikkelson after this.